Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another NASPA IEKC Fika. This is a series where we have short little chats with folks around the world talking about international education. My name is Corey Owen, and I'm the Dean of Students at Yale and US College in Singapore. And I'm super excited to have my guest with me. I'm going to let her introduce herself. We've known each other for many, many years, and it's been nice to kind of catch up. And I am thrilled that she has agreed to come on here and share a little bit about her journey. Katsumi, can you introduce yourself real quick?
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me. It's been really fun catching up with you as well. So my name is Katsumi Kishida. I am the executive director of Temple University Japan campus, Kyoto. And I've been in this role since last year, July. And we just opened up this satellite location in Kyoto for Temple University, Japan, this January. So it's been a roller coaster ride a little bit, but it's been a fun ride.
I love that. It's interesting because, opening up a new any kind of venture can be stressful but exciting, never a dull moment. I'm sure that you've experienced a little bit of that. What is a standout thing that you remember, just thinking about your last couple months on campus in Japan that really stood out as, wow, this is an adjustment. This is new.
Yeah, wow. There's definitely lots. I can probably talk for hours on different wow moments. But it's really fun to start something from the ground up, right? I mean, Temple University Japan has been in Tokyo for over 40 years. So obviously the groundwork has been there. They've been very successful. But opening up a satellite location in a new area in Japan definitely has that startup vibe, right? So, our first time venturing outside of Tokyo in this Kansai area in Kyoto. So, lots of wow moments, absolutely. But when I arrived to Kyoto in July, I kept thinking to myself, is this really happening? Am I really here? I've been in the US for the last 20 plus years working in higher ed and different universities. And I find myself right back home in Kyoto, opening up this location. So, there was just moments where I would be like riding on a train thinking, gosh, this is my life now. And is this really happening? But it's been great energy, hiring the staff members for this brand new location, going through this massive undertaking together with a small but mighty crew has been a lot of fun. Transitioning back to Kyoto or to my home country, Japan, has been a challenge. Again, roller coaster ride, ups and downs, never a dull moment, of course. But there's a lot of stories that I can definitely share with everybody about my experience so far.
Yeah, I mean, so speaking of roller coasters, I think anyone that works in international education, we know the little culture shock, reverse culture shock wave. You've been in the US for a long time. What kind of reverse culture shock did you experience moving back this summer?
Yeah, lots of different culture shock, reverse culture shock for sure. But just a little bit about my life story. So I'm originally from Japan, born in Osaka. When I was 10, I moved to the US and I was in New Jersey until I finished middle school. And then I came back to Japan with my family for high school. And that's when I really first experienced reverse culture shock, right? We talk a lot about it with our students, especially when they, finish spending time abroad or right, our international students that spend time in the US and then go home. So reverse culture shock is real. I didn't understand it until I experienced it. So when I went back in high school, first, having my parents tell me that, hey, we're going back to Japan, that in itself was a huge life shock moment, right? I thought, as somebody going into freshman in high school, I thought my life was over. Like, what do you mean you're taking me away from my social circle, my best friend, right before I start high school, right? Like the excitement of starting high school, what to come. Um, but it was where my life journey took me. So I kind of thought, hey, hey, okay, well, it might not be so bad to reconnect with my home country, right? For lack of a better term, you know, be together with my people, right? So I went home with an expectation that I would fit right in. And the reverse culture shock was that I didn't fit right in, or that I didn't necessarily feel a sense of belonging. Because although I was Japanese, born in Japan, raised, part of my life in Japan, but the formative years were spent outside of Japan. So, speaking both English and Japanese, being raised in a Japanese American educational system, right? The way I carried myself, way I spoke the way I spoke, the way I interacted in a classroom was just different, right? So here I ventured going back home to be like, oh wow, I get to be with my people, only to find out that the culture that I grew up in was already so different from, let's say, a Japanese person that grew up in Japan for their entire lives, right up until that time. Um, so I think my first reverse culture shock at that time was more about culture and language, around language, or the way I present myself, or who I identify as, right? Am I Japanese? Am I American? Right? Kind of struggling through those identities and where I fit. So this time coming back, after being 20 plus years in the United States, having a career there, I thought, well, I already went through reverse culture shock when I came back in high school. And I did spend high school and undergrad in Japan. So I thought, well, I've done that, been there, I've gone
Ready?
through that. It's not going to happen this time around. Come to find out, I definitely went through another phase of reverse culture shock, which was more about not identity, right? Because at this point in my life, I'm pretty secure with who I am, my dual identity as being Japanese and also being raised in the United States. But it was really around reverse culture shock, around the workplace, or the work culture, right? So, for example, there isn't much different gendered representation in Japan in the workplace, right? Let's say if we take female leadership in Japan, it's still less than 10%. Less than 10% of management is female in Japan. I'm fortunate that TUJ, there's a lot of women in leadership. So in my current workplace, I feel right at home, right? Where I see other colleagues that are female or other gender representing persons that are in leadership roles. However, once I step outside of Temple, that is not the case in Japanese society, right? So I go to different meetings, high level meetings, and really I'm usually the token female in the meeting. And the perception that I receive, or the nuances that I feel when I'm there, is that it's general confusion, because it's not what they're expecting. Like, I'm not who they're expecting to be the executive director of an American university campus. Right, sometimes the expressions I receive, or the expectation that I'm not the executive director. I must be, let's say, an administrative assistant that's coming with the executive director to the meeting to take notes, right? So I pick up on these nuances, right? Because culturally, as a Japanese person, you do pick up these nuances, right? Nothing is ever said, right? Nothing is ever said, but it's this feeling that you get in the meeting room. So, I'm hopeful that Japan will increase a different gender representation in the workplace in the future, but there's a lot of work to be done. And I think that was a reverse culture shock because I thought maybe it has gotten better by now after 20 plus years of leaving the last time I left.
Yeah. It's interesting because before we got started on this recording, we were chatting a little bit about how your name can be used for either gender or any gender. And that's the same with mine. And so it's interesting how having a name that is ambiguous might lead to certain assumptions, especially when you're in a leadership role. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
I recognize that, you have just brought in your first cohort. I would love to hear just like maybe one or two words about like what their experience have been like. I mean, because coming to a new campus, that I'm sure comes with a lot of feelings, a lot of emotions, a lot of transitions, but also
Mhm.
a lot of energy because to be the first cohort of students on any campus usually takes a
Mhm.
certain type of personality. So, what are some things that you're noticing about these students?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first of all, I want to say thanks to all my students that took a chance on us, right? So when we were recruiting students for Kyoto, there was no pictures of students, right, in the buildings. There wasn't like fun social media posting about the different activities that the students are doing. Right. So my students really took a chance, right? Brave, very brave. If I was a student, I might be like, uh, does the campus really exist, right? Are there really going to be classroom? Are there really going to be teachers? But, I think one of the reasons why my students were able to be brave is because the Toku campus has been so successful, right? So we're not opening up a brand new institution, right? We're Temple University. We've been around for a long time. Temple University Japan for over 40 years and has been really successful in developing global leaders for many years. So, yes, it is a brand new location, but we have the base of Temple University. So all that to say, but still, I want to say thanks to my students for taking a chance. They're very, they were very excited, which then drove my energy up, right? Their excitement to be the first cohort of students. And they were so excited to really create the campus culture from the ground up, right? So some of our student leaders are making brand new student clubs on campus, right? I think we have like four different student clubs now at TUJ Kyoto, which, we started with zero. So, really being in the presence of that energy that our students bring in creating something new, them coming up to me and be like, this is so cool. Like, I get to be the first social media ambassador to really talk about TUJ Kyoto and really start creating a community of students. So the energy is incredible. The students are, brave, having a great time in Kyoto, learning about Kyoto as well, the traditions, the culture, the history, and really making the experience their own. So always inspired, fascinated by, our younger generation, their grit, their guts, right? Their energy, and their perspective to just kind of take it on as it is, right? And create something wonderful out of it. So, you know,
That.
it's if it's not with the, if it's not the students, right? Like why are we doing this work, right? It's because, obviously we want to create a community for our students, but at the end of the day, I always think it's them creating the community for us, to drive our work forward. So, All that to say, I just want to say thanks to all my students for being the first cohort. They've been amazing. It's been such a fun ride, spending this first semester with them, and something that we can all like take right with us to be like, hey, we were the first cohort of students and staff and faculty members to embark on this mission. So, excited for cohort two, but definitely cohort one has special place in my heart.
I love that. Yeah, those memories are gonna last forever.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing your journey and all the
Yeah.
exciting things happening in Kyoto. This sounds
Yeah.
amazing. I
Thank you so much
appreciate
for having
everything.
me.
Yes.
Yeah.
And thank you everyone watching. We'll have another episode coming up soon. All right, bye-bye.